Present day, Main Gate, Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton, California. 7:20 in the morning. Claire Hartley stood at the checkpoint with an invitation letter folded 3 times in her right hand. The creases were soft from nervous fingers. She wore civilian clothes, grey cardigan over a white blouse, jeans that had seen better days, hair pulled back in a ponytail that was more practical than pretty. 39 years old, and she looked like someone's aunt. Which she was. Nothing about her said veteran. Nothing about her said warrior. Nothing about her said hero. The 2 Marines at the gate were young. Corporal Brian Foster had kind eyes and 3 rows of ribbons that meant he'd been somewhere hot. Private First Class Derek Mills had the lean, hungry look of someone still trying to prove something. They both wore the expression of men who'd seen enough liars to spot one at 20 paces. Foster ran her ID card through the scanner, frowned, ran it again. The machine beeped twice. Red light. "Ma'am, this isn't coming up in our system." Claire had expected this, practiced for it. Rehearsed the words in her car on the drive up from San Diego. Still, her throat tightened. Try manual lookup, Hartley, Hartley, Claire Marie. Mills typed into his terminal. Waited. The cursor blinked. Nothing appeared. He typed again with more force, like the keyboard was the problem. "Ma'am, there's no record of a Claire Hartley ever serving in the Navy." The morning sun was already hot. Claire felt sweat forming at her collar. Not from heat, from the old familiar panic that started in her chest and worked its way out to her fingers. "That's not possible." Foster tried to smile. Failed. "Database says no match. You're listed as civilian only. Never military." Mills leaned forward. His eyes had gone from cautious to suspicious in the space of 10 seconds. "Ma'am, where'd you get that veteran's ID?" Claire's hand went to her wallet without thinking. Pulled out a photograph that had lived there for 13 years. The edges were soft. The colors faded. 14 Marines in full combat gear standing in the Afghan desert. Dust on every face. Blood on some uniforms. One woman in the center wearing Navy fatigues with the caduceus patch on her shoulder. Hospital corpsman. Doc, the person you screamed for when everything went wrong. She handed the photo to Foster. "These men will remember me. Find them." Mills took it from Foster's hand before he could respond. Squinted at the image like it might bite him. "This could be photoshopped. Anyone can fake an old picture." Claire said nothing. She'd learned a long time ago that silence was sometimes the only weapon you had left. Foster looked uncomfortable now. Glanced at his partner. Glanced at the growing line of cars behind Claire's sedan. Glanced at the photo again. "Ma'am, I need you to step aside while we verify this." The word verify hit like a slap. 13 years of staying quiet. 13 years of being nobody. 13 years of letting the world forget. And now here she was being asked to prove she'd ever existed at all. Behind her, a car honked. Morning traffic building. People had places to be. The real question was whether Claire Hartley was one of them, or just a ghost trying to walk through walls. 30 minutes earlier and 300 yards away, Colonel Rachel Stokes sat in her office reviewing the morning's graduation roster on her tablet. School of Infantry West. Another batch of young sailors earning the right to call themselves Navy Corpsmen. The ones who'd go down range with the Marines. The ones who'd see what Doc saw. The ones who'd come back different or not come back at all. Her coffee was going cold. She didn't notice. Her eyes had caught on a name. Mason Hartley. Hospital man, 3rd class, fresh out of Field Medical Training Battalion. 21 years old, which meant he'd been born right around the time Stokes had been fighting her own war in Fallujah. The circle kept turning, new blood replacing old. She clicked on the family contact information out of habit. Next of kin, Claire Hartley, relationship, aunt. Stokes's coffee cup stopped halfway to her mouth. She set it down slowly. Opened a different application on her terminal. The classified database that required 3 passwords and a fingerprint scan. Typed, Hartley, Claire Marie, service record. The screen went black for 2 seconds. Then red text appeared. Access denied. Level 5, clearance required. Stokes had level 4 clearance. She'd had it for 6 years. There were maybe 12 people in the entire Marine Corps with level 5. Most of them worked in basements at the Pentagon and never saw daylight. She tried a different search, Helmand Province 2011, Corpsman, female. The computer thought about it, came back with error, no records found. That was impossible. Stokes had been in Helmand in 2011. She knew there'd been female corpsmen attached to some units. Knew because she'd fought alongside one. Briefly. A dark-haired woman with steady hands who'd saved 3 Marines during a convoy ambush, and then vanished into the bureaucratic fog of medevac and hospitals and the long chain of paperwork that swallowed people whole. Stokes couldn't remember the woman's name, but she remembered the story. 14 wounded, 8 critical. Doc stayed on scene for 90 minutes under fire while air support got its act together. Earned a Silver Star for it. Or should have. Her phone rang. Duty officer, ma'am, we have a situation at main gate. She was already standing. Talk to me. Woman claiming to be a veteran, but she's not showing up in our database. Guards are calling it possible stolen valor. Getting heated. Stokes felt something cold move through her chest. What's her name? Claire Hartley. Stokes was moving before she made the conscious decision. Out of her office. Down the hallway. Her boots hitting tile with the rhythm of someone who'd learned to run toward gunfire instead of away from it. She hit the door to the outside, and the California sun felt like stepping into an oven, but she didn't slow down. At the main gate, the crowd had grown. Morning traffic was backed up 8 cars deep. People were getting out of vehicles. Phone cameras were up. The modern version of a public execution. Death by social media. Mills had his voice raised now, performing for an audience. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to answer some questions. Where did you supposedly serve? Claire's voice had gotten quieter. Stokes knew that sound. The sound of someone circling the drain of a panic attack but trying to hold it together through pure force of will. Afghanistan, Helmand Province, 2011 through 2012. What unit? 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines. Mills got louder. Playing to the cameras now. That's a rifle battalion. Infantry. They didn't attach female corpsmen to frontline units back then. This is stolen valor, people. This woman is lying about her service. Someone in the crowd shouted something ugly. Claire didn't react. She was somewhere else now, somewhere hot and loud and 13 years in the past. Foster looked miserable, looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Ma'am, maybe you should just go. Come back with your husband or someone who can verify this. Claire didn't have a husband. Didn't have anyone except a nephew who was about to graduate into the same nightmare she had barely survived. She stood there taking it because that's what you did when the system decided you didn't exist. You stood there and you took it, and you hoped someone somewhere remembered you were human. Then she started talking. Voice flat, mechanical, the voice of someone reciting a grocery list except the list was trauma. October 14th, 2011. Convoy ambush 3 kilometers outside Sangin. IED followed by small arms fire from elevated positions. 14 casualties, 8 critical. Casevac delayed 90 minutes due to enemy fire. I held position until extraction. Mills opened his mouth. Claire kept going. Sanchez took shrapnel to his femoral artery. I used his belt as a tourniquet because mine was already on Corporal Williams's leg. He was screaming. I told him to shut up and live. He did. Private Keller had a tension pneumothorax. I needle decompressed with a ballpoint pen because we'd run out of chest seals. The click when it released pressure sounded like a door opening. Gunny Martinez had abdominal trauma, too much blood, too fast. He died holding my hand. I told him he'd be fine. I lied. I've been lying about it for 13 years. The crowd had gone quiet. Mills had gone pale. Foster was staring at Claire like he was seeing her for the first time. Like the middle-aged woman in the cardigan had just peeled off a mask and revealed something else underneath. Something that had seen things he'd only heard about in training. A voice cut through the silence, sharp. Female. Authority that didn't need volume. What the hell is going on here? Everyone turned. Colonel Rachel Stokes pushed through the crowd in her service uniform with the silver oak leaf on her collar catching sunlight. 48 years old, and every year showed in the lines around her eyes. The good kind of lines. The kind you earned. She saw Claire. Their eyes met. Neither woman recognized the other, but Stokes recognized the story. Recognized those specific details because she'd read them in an after-action report 7 years ago, when she'd been researching female integration into combat roles. Recognized them because they'd been in a citation for a Silver Star. A citation that hadn't belonged to anyone named Claire Hartley. Stokes's voice dropped 20 degrees. Lance Corporal Mills, stand down. Ma'am, she's clearly fabricating her service record. The database shows nothing. I was just following protocol for suspected stolen valor. I said stand down, now. Mills stepped back. The crowd sensed a shift. Phones stayed up, but the energy changed from bloodlust to curiosity. Stokes turned to Claire, extended her hand. Ms. Hartley, I'm Colonel Stokes. Would you come with me, please? Claire looked at the hand like it might be a trap. Am I being detained? No, but we need to talk, privately. They walked towards the admin building. Stokes kept her pace measured, professional, gave Claire time to get her breathing under control, didn't speak until they were away from the cameras. Then, quietly, the convoy ambush. October 14th, 14 wounded. That happened. Claire's voice was raw. I know it happened. I was there. According to official records, the corpsman on that convoy was HM2 Grant Morrison. Male, brown hair, originally from Nebraska. He received a Silver Star for actions that day at a ceremony at Camp Lejeune in March 2012. Claire stopped walking. Stokes continued. Everything you just described, the tourniquet, the needle decompression, Gunny Martinez, that's all in Grant Morrison's citation, word for word. Either you memorized someone else's award or someone gave him mine. The words hung in the desert air between them. Stokes pulled out her phone, pulled up the citation she'd bookmarked years ago, showed Claire the screen. There was a photo. Man in dress blues, holding a small blue box with a star-shaped medal inside, smiling the smile of someone accepting an honor he'd earned. Claire stared at the photo for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. I don't know him. You've never seen this man? Never. But you were on that convoy. I was the only corpsman on that convoy. Stokes felt something shift in her understanding of the world, something fundamental. The military ran on documentation, on records, on the absolute certainty that if something happened, it got written down and filed and saved. The idea that someone could be erased, that heroism could be transferred like a bank account, that history could be rewritten with keystrokes. She looked at Claire Hartley standing in the morning sun, looking like someone's aunt, and saw something else. Saw a ghost, saw someone who'd been killed on paper and left to wander. Ms. Hartley, do you have your DD-214, your discharge papers? Claire nodded, pulled out her phone with shaking hands, found the scanned document she'd saved 7 years ago when she'd needed it for a VA loan, handed the phone over. Stokes looked at the document. Standard format, name, rank, dates of service, character of discharge. All looked normal until her eyes reached the bottom. Small print. The kind you'd miss if you weren't looking. Classification, redacted under Title 50, USC. She looked up sharply. Do you know what this means? Claire shook her head. Title 50. That's the legal code for war and national defense. Covert operations, black programs, intelligence operations so classified they don't officially exist. Someone at the highest levels of government ordered your service record classified under national security law. Why would they do that? That's what we're going to find out. Come on. 300 miles away in a nondescript office building in Arlington, Virginia, a secure phone rang. The man who answered it was 62 years old, with silver hair cut military short and a face that gave nothing away. He wore a civilian suit, but everyone who worked with him knew he'd worn stars on his shoulders once. Maybe still did in rooms without windows. The voice on the other end was younger, nervous. Sir, we have a situation. Claire Hartley surfaced at Camp Pendleton. The man's expression didn't change, after 13 years. Interesting. Status? Local CO is asking questions, running database queries. She's already seen the Morrison citation. What level clearance does the CO have? 4. Then she won't find anything. Hartley was a level 5 lock. Cross-protocol is still in effect. Sir, Hartley has her DD-214. Shows the Title 50 classification. The man was quiet for 3 seconds. Then, that was sloppy. Who approved her discharge paperwork? Morrison did, sir, before he died. Grant always had a conscience. The words carried the tone of someone discussing a character flaw. Initiate containment. Standard protocol. Make it look accidental. Understood. And make sure the nephew doesn't become a problem. He's about to graduate today. If Hartley starts asking the wrong questions, use the nephew as leverage. The man hung up, opened a locked file cabinet with a key he kept in his jacket pocket, pulled out a thick folder with faded edges. The tab read, Operation Silent Guardian. Claire Hartley, Tier 1 asset, terminated. Inside the folder were photographs, mission reports, medical records, psych evaluations. Everything you'd need to build a person from scratch or erase them completely. He picked up a red stamp, pressed it across the front page. The ink was still wet when he closed the folder. Cross-protocol active, do not resuscitate. He filed it back in the cabinet, locked it, straightened his tie. He had a meeting with the Joint Chiefs in 40 minutes. Had to talk about the future of special operations integration. Had to smile and nod while senators who'd never heard a shot fired in anger told him how to run covert programs. He'd been doing this for 30 years, erasing people who knew too much, protecting secrets that would end careers, keeping the machine running smooth. One more ghost wouldn't matter. Back at Camp Pendleton, the graduation field was filling with families. Mason Hartley stood in formation with his class, 23 new Corpsmen about to earn the right to deploy with Marine infantry units, about to learn what DOC really meant, about to discover that the hardest part of saving lives was living with the ones you couldn't save. He checked his phone during a break in the ceremony prep. Text from Claire, running late, gate issue, be there soon. His buddy Rodriguez leaned over. Your aunt's still coming? Yeah, she's just not great with military stuff. Bad memories. She served. Mason hesitated. Claire never talked about it. Shut down every conversation. Changed the subject when he asked questions. But he'd found the photo. Found the DD-214 hidden in a box in her garage. Found enough pieces to know she'd been somewhere bad and come back different. Yeah, Navy Corpsman, Afghanistan. Rodriguez whistled low. Badass. She see combat? I don't know. Every time I ask, she acts like I asked her to cut off her own arm. Mason pulled out the photograph, the one he'd scanned and saved before putting the original back where he'd found it. Showed Rodriguez. This is the only proof I have. She's in it. Center. With 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines, but she won't tell me what happened that day. Rodriguez studied this photo, zoomed in on faces. Dude, if your aunt was with 2-7 in Helmand, that battalion saw some serious shit, like seriously serious. Some of the worst fighting of the whole war. I know, that's why I enlisted. Because of her, because I wanted to understand what she went through. Does she know you joined? Mason looked guilty. Found out last week when the invitation came in the mail. She called me crying. Not happy crying. She begged me to drop out. Said I didn't understand what I was signing up for. Said the Navy takes more than it gives. What did you say? That I was doing this because of her. That she was a hero even if she wouldn't admit it. Rodriguez handed the phone back. Man, you got guts. I hope she shows up. Mason looked toward the main gate. Saw a commotion. Saw a crowd. Saw someone being escorted by a colonel toward the admin building. Even from 300 yards away, he recognized the grey cardigan. In Colonel Stokes's office, the air conditioning was fighting a losing battle against the California heat. Claire sat in a chair that was probably meant to be comfortable, but felt like sitting on broken glass. Every nerve ending firing, every instinct screaming run. Stokes locked the door, pulled the blinds, sat down at her desk and opened her laptop. The login process took 90 seconds. 3 passwords, fingerprint, retinal scan, the kind of security you used when one wrong click could start a war. She pulled up a classified database, typed carefully. Ms. Hartley, I'm going to ask you questions. Answer honestly. You understand? Yes, ma'am. Are you Claire Marie Hartley, born March 7th, 1985? Yes. Did you enlist in the Navy in 2007, age 22? Yes. Did you serve as Hospital Corpsman, 2nd Class, attached to 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines from March 2011 to February 2012? Yes. Stokes turned the laptop screen toward Claire, showed her the service record she'd pulled up. Name, Morrison, Grant M. Rate, HM, 2 Unit, 2nd. BN, 7th Marines. Deployment, Helmand Province. Afghanistan 2011 to 2012. Awards, Silver Star October 14th, 2011. Purple Heart, Navy Commendation Medal with Valor Device. Below the text was a photograph. Man in dress blues, dark hair, kind eyes, holding a medal case. Claire reached towards the screen like she was reaching for a ghost. Her finger touched the glass. That's my citation, my Purple Heart, my… Her voice broke. Stokes waited. Let the silence do the work. That's my Silver Star. Stokes spoke carefully. Do you know this man, Grant Morrison? No, never seen him. Never heard his name until today. According to records, he died 3 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. He was buried with full military honors at Arlington. His Silver Star citation was read at the funeral. Your citation? Claire's hands were shaking now. Full tremors, the kind that came from deep in the nervous system where trauma lived. Why? Why would they do this? Stokes pulled up another document. Claire's DD-214 pointed to the bottom line. Because of this. Title 50, classification. Your service was deemed a national security matter. Someone decided you were a liability. Someone decided your story couldn't be told. So they gave it to someone else. But I earned that medal. I bled for it. I watched men die. I held tourniquets and I screamed at Marines to stay awake. And I didn't sleep for 3 days after, because every time I closed my eyes, I saw Gunny Martinez looking at me like I'd promised him something I couldn't deliver. I know. Then why? Because someone up the chain made a decision that erasing you was more important than honoring you. And I'm going to find out who. Claire laughed, no humor in it. Just the sound of someone who'd stopped believing in justice a long time ago. You can't fight this. Whatever this is, it's bigger than both of us. Stokes closed the laptop, leaned forward. Ms. Hartley, I've been in the Marine Corps for 26 years. I've seen some shit. I've covered up some shit. I've been ordered to forget things I saw and lie about things I knew. But I have never ever seen someone's entire service record erased and handed to someone else. That's not bureaucratic error. That's not a filing mistake. That's deliberate. That's a crime. And I don't let crimes stand. Claire looked at her, really looked, saw something she hadn't expected, saw someone who meant what they said, saw an ally in a world that had spent 13 years teaching her she was alone. What do we do? First, you tell me everything. Second, I make some calls. Third, we get ready for a fight. The mention of October 14th had triggered something. Claire's hand went to her left shoulder without thinking. The scar tissue there was 13 years old, but it still ached when the weather changed. Still reminded her. Stokes noticed. That's where you got hit? Claire nodded. Tell me what happened. Not the citation version, the real version. Claire closed her eyes. The office disappeared. California disappeared. 13 years fell away like paper burning. Convoy. Route clearance patrol south of Sangin. We'd done the route 17 times. 18th time the Taliban was waiting. IED under the third vehicle, I was in the fourth. Explosion lifted the Humvee 6 feet off the ground. I remember thinking that's not how physics should work. Then the small arms fire started. She opened her eyes, kept talking. Stokes didn't interrupt. I ran to the damaged vehicle. 3 wounded inside, 1 critical. Sanchez, femoral artery. I got the tourniquet on, but I didn't have enough. Williams was next vehicle back. Leg wound, needed another tourniquet. I used mine, then I used Sanchez's belt. Then I used comms wire when I ran out of belts. Stokes was taking notes. Not officially, just so she'd remember. Keller had a chest wound, sucking chest seal. But we were out. I used the plastic from an MRE wrapper and duct tape. It held, barely. Then the radio crackled. Cassavac inbound 2 minutes. I thought we'd made it. What happened? The helicopter got fired on, waved off. Pilot said the LZ was too hot. They'd try again when the area was secure. Secure meant when someone else showed up with enough guns to make the Taliban think twice. That took 90 minutes. 90 minutes is a long time when someone's bleeding. Claire's voice went flat again. Yeah, it is. Martinez didn't make it. Internal bleeding I couldn't stop. He was 41, had 3 kids, his youngest was 6. He showed me pictures on his phone while he was dying. Kept apologizing for bleeding on my uniform. Jesus. Then this other guy showed up. Another corpsman I'd never seen before. He had the same unit patch, but I'd never met him. He said his name was Morrison. Grant Morrison. Said he'd been attached to a different platoon, but heard the call for doc and came running. He helped me load casualties when the bird finally showed up. And then? Then he told me I was getting on the helicopter first. I argued. Said the critical cases go first. He said I was a critical case. I looked down and realized I'd been shot. Shoulder. Didn't even feel it. Adrenaline is a hell of a drug. So you evacuated? He put me on the bird, told me he'd catch the next one with the last few wounded. Told me good job, Doc. Told me I'd saved lives today. Then the helicopter lifted and I never saw him again. Until today, in a photograph, holding your medal. Claire's eyes were wet now. He seemed like a good guy, like he actually cared, like he understood what it meant to be Doc. Why would he take credit for what I did? Stokes had a theory, one she didn't want to say out loud yet. Because if she was right, Grant Morrison hadn't taken anything. He'd been given it, just like Claire had been given erasure. When did you get discharged? February 2012. Medical retirement, PTSD. They said I needed treatment, sent me to a facility in San Diego. Kept me there for 8 months. Said it was for my own good. Did you get treatment? Claire looked away. They gave me pills, lots of pills, made me sleep 16 hours a day. Made me forget things. Made me not care about forgetting things. When I got out, I felt like someone had scooped out my brain and replaced it with cotton. That's not treatment. That's sedation. I know that now. Then I just wanted to stop seeing Martinez's face every time I closed my eyes. The pills did that. For a while. And the ceremony? When Morrison got the Silver Star, I was in the facility, drugged. I didn't even know there was a ceremony until years later when I tried to get my records for a VA loan. That's when I found out Grant Morrison existed. That's when I learned my heroism had been reassigned. Stokes stood up, started pacing. This is bigger than I thought. This isn't just stolen valor. This is a systematic cover-up. Someone wanted you gone. Someone wanted your story erased. And they used Morrison to do it. But why? I was just a corpsman. I did my job. I didn't see anything classified. I didn't know any secrets. Maybe you did and you don't remember. Or maybe it wasn't about what you knew. Maybe it was about what you represented. What's that supposed to mean? Stokes stopped pacing, looked directly at Claire. This was 2011. Women weren't officially allowed in ground combat roles yet. That didn't happen until 2013. But you were there. You were attached to an infantry battalion. You were in firefights. You earned a Silver Star in combat. You were proof that women could do the job years before the Pentagon said they could. So they erased me to hide the evidence, or to avoid the political fight. Think about it. 2011. The debate about women in combat was radioactive. Half of Congress said women couldn't handle it. The other half said they should have the chance. If your story got out, it would have forced the issue years early. Someone decided it was easier to make you disappear. Claire sat with that for a long moment. 13 years of thinking she'd been forgotten. 13 years of believing she didn't matter. And now this. Now the possibility that she'd mattered so much, they'd had to erase her. The graduation ceremony was starting. Outside Stokes's office, the sound of the national anthem played over loudspeakers. Families stood, hands over hearts, the ritual of honoring those who served. Claire heard it through the window and felt something break inside her chest. I need to see Mason graduate. Stokes nodded. We'll go. But Ms. Hartley, you need to understand something. If I'm right about this, if someone erased you for political reasons, they're not going to be happy that you're asking questions now. They're going to want to keep you quiet. How? However they need to. They walked to the graduation field in silence. The ceremony was already underway. Families filled the bleachers. Mason stood in formation with his class, looking sharp in his service uniform, looking proud, looking like someone who hadn't yet learned what the uniform cost. Claire found a spot at the edge of the crowd, tried to be invisible. Old habit. Stokes stayed close, scanned the perimeter, her training kicking in, looking for threats, looking for things that didn't belong. She found one immediately. Black Suburban, tinted windows, parked at the edge of the lot, where it had a clear view of the ceremony but wasn't part of it. Government plates, not base security, wrong department codes. 2 men inside, suits, earpieces visible even from 100 yards away. Watching. Colonel, Claire's voice was quiet. 2 o'clock, black vehicle. I see it. Those aren't base security. No, they're not. Stokes's phone buzzed. Text from a number with a Virginia area code she didn't recognize. Stand down, Colonel. Hartley matter is classified. Cease investigation. This is not a request. She showed Claire. Claire's phone buzzed at the same moment. Different number, same Virginia area code. Some heroes die twice, go home, forget, or die for real. The ceremony continued. The commandant was speaking about honor and sacrifice and the proud tradition of Navy Corpsman serving alongside Marines. About how Doc was always there when you needed him. About how that bond was sacred. Claire watched Mason, watched him stand at attention, watched him believe every word. The suburban doors opened. Both men got out, started walking toward the ceremony. Toward Claire, hands inside their jackets in that way that meant they were armed and wanted you to know it. Stokes put her hand on Claire's arm. "Ms. Hartley, I think you should leave, now. I can't. Mason's about to graduate. He'll look for me. Claire, these people erased you once. They can do it again. Permanently." The men were closer now. 50 yards, 40, moving with purpose, moving like people who'd done this before. Claire's training kicked in. Combat math, distance to target, time to intercept, angles of escape. Cover positions. She hadn't thought like this in 13 years, but it came back like riding a bicycle. 20 yards to Mason, 6 seconds at a run, 8 seconds to full cover behind the admin building, 14 seconds to the gate, 17 to her car. But she'd have to leave Mason. The ceremony ended. Graduates broke formation, families rushed forward. Mason looked around, looking for the grey cardigan, looking for his aunt. Found her. Started walking over with that smile that made him look 12 years old instead of 21. "Aunt Claire, you made it. Did you see? I'm officially a Fleet Marine Force Corpsman now." Claire hugged him tight. Over his shoulder, she watched the two men. They'd stopped. 15 yards away, waiting, watching. One of them touched his earpiece, listened to something, nodded, pulled his hand away from his jacket, empty. Both men turned, walked back to the Suburban, got in, drove away. Claire didn't relax, didn't let go of Mason. Stokes stood next to them, spoke quietly. "That was a warning. They wanted you to know they're watching, wanted you to know they can get to you anytime they want." Mason pulled back from the hug, looked between them. "Aunt Claire, what's going on? Who were those guys?" Claire opened her mouth to answer, to lie, to say it was nothing, to protect him the way she'd been protecting him for 13 years. But Stokes spoke first. "Mason, your aunt is a hero, a real one, and some very powerful people want to keep that secret. We're going to make sure that doesn't happen." Mason looked confused. "What are you talking about?" Claire took a breath. The truth was going to hurt, but maybe hurt was better than lies. "Mason, there's something I need to tell you. About Afghanistan. About why I didn't want you to become a corpsman. About why I've been lying to you for your entire life." The sun was setting now. Long shadows across the parade ground. The ceremony was over, but the real fight was just beginning. Somewhere in Virginia, a man in a suit hung up his phone and made a note in a file. Made a call to someone else. Set things in motion that couldn't be stopped. Some heroes died once on the battlefield. The lucky ones stayed dead. Claire Hartley was about to find out what happened to the ones who didn't. The base chapel was empty at 1900 hours. Mason had suggested it. Neutral ground where nobody would think to look for them. The pews smelled like old wood and furniture polish. Evening light filtered through stained glass windows, showing saints Claire didn't recognize. She'd stopped believing in saints a long time ago. Around the same time, she'd stopped believing in justice. Mason sat in the front row. Still in his dress uniform from graduation, the crease in his trousers was sharp enough to cut. His face was sharp too, sharp with questions and confusion and the dawning realization that his aunt had been lying to him his entire life. Colonel Stokes stood near the door, keeping watch, her service pistol visible on her hip now. Not hidden. A statement. Claire sat next to Mason, but not too close. Gave him space to process, space to be angry. He'd earned that right. "Tell me everything," he said. His voice was level, but his hands were shaking. Not from fear, from rage barely controlled. Claire looked at those hands, saw them as they'd been when he was 6 years old and she'd become his legal guardian after his mother died. Small hands that had held hers during the funeral. Hands that had trusted her completely. October 14th, 2011. She started where all the bad stories started, with a date, Helmand Province, Afghanistan. I was attached to 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines as their corpsman. We called it Doc, not me personally. The job. You were Doc no matter what your name was. Doc was who you screamed for when the world ended. Mason said nothing, listened. We were on a convoy patrol, route clearance, looking for IEDs. Found one the hard way. Explosion took out the third vehicle. I was in the fourth. Everything after that was fire and blood and radio chatter about air support that wasn't coming fast enough. She told him about Sanchez, about Williams, about Keller with the collapsed lung and the ballpoint pen that saved his life, about Gunny Martinez dying while apologizing for bleeding on her uniform. Told him everything she'd told the crowd at the gate, except now she added the parts she'd left out. The fear, the certainty she was going to die. The moment when she'd looked at 14 wounded Marines and realized she was the only thing standing between them and death. I held that position for 90 minutes, she said. 90 minutes feels like 90 years when you're doing triage math in your head, deciding who gets the last morphine, who gets the last tourniquet, who you lie to about their chances. Mason's jaw was tight. What happened after? KCVAC finally came. Helicopter extraction. They loaded the critical cases first. Then someone I'd never met before told me I was getting on the bird next. Said his name was Grant Morrison. Said he was a corpsman from another platoon. He practically carried me to the helicopter because I'd been shot and hadn't noticed. Shoulder wound, through and through. I'd been operating on adrenaline and training and pure stubborn refusal to die. And then they flew me to Germany, field hospital, surgery, recovery. Then they sent me to a psychiatric facility in San Diego. Said I had PTSD, said I needed treatment, gave me pills that turned my brain into fog, kept me there for 8 months. When I got out, I found out I'd been medically retired. Found out Grant Morrison had received a Silver Star at Camp Lejeune for actions on October 14th. My actions, my citation, my medal. Claire's voice had gone flat. The same mechanical tone from the gate. The voice of someone reciting facts to avoid feeling them. I tried to fight it. Called the Navy, called the VA, called everyone I could think of. They all said the same thing. No record of Claire Hartley serving with 2-7. No record of Claire Hartley in Helmand. No record of Claire Hartley doing anything except existing as a civilian who'd been medically discharged for psychiatric reasons. I was a ghost. A story someone had made up. A mistake in the system. So you gave up. It wasn't a question. Mason knew his aunt well enough to know she'd never given up on anything in her life. But there was giving up and there was tactical retreat. Sometimes you retreated to survive. I got a job at the VA clinic. Kept my head down, raised you, tried to forget, tried to be normal. Tried to be someone who hadn't held a dying man's hand and lied to him about survival. Mason stood up, paced the aisle, his boots echoed on the stone floor. Why didn't you tell me? All these years, why? Because you were 6 years old when your mother died and you'd already lost enough. Because I didn't want you growing up thinking your aunt was crazy. Because the pills made me forget parts of it myself and I wasn't sure what was real anymore. Because I was ashamed. Ashamed of what? You saved 14 men. Ashamed that I let them erase me. Ashamed that I didn't fight harder. Ashamed that I took the pills and the discharge and the quiet little life they offered instead of burning the whole system down. Mason stopped pacing, looked at her, really looked, saw past the cardigan and the sensible shoes and the image of middle-aged normalcy she'd built like armor. But you're fighting now. Claire met his eyes. Because you enlisted, because you're about to become what I was. Because I can't let them do to you what they did to me. Colonel Stokes spoke from the doorway. Her voice carried the weight of someone who'd made a decision and was committed to seeing it through. Ms. Hartley, I made some calls while you two were talking. Called in some favors. Reached out to people I trust. People who owe me. I found something. What? Evidence that you're not the only one. Operation Silent Guardian. Ring any bells? Claire shook her head. Stokes walked down the aisle, pulled out her phone, showed them a document she'd photographed from a secure terminal. Classified stamp across the top. Level 5 clearance required. The kind of document that could end careers just by existing. Operation Silent Guardian was a pilot program from 2010 to 2012, testing female operators in frontline combat roles. Wanted to see if women could handle the physical and psychological demands before making any official policy changes. Needed proof before the political fight. Mason read over Claire's shoulder. How many women? 3, all Navy Corpsmen, all attached to Marine infantry battalions in Afghanistan. All served with distinction. All earned medals for valor. Claire felt something cold move through her chest. Where are the other two? Dead. One died in a training accident in 2014. Helicopter crash at 29 Palms. The other died in 2016. Car accident on Interstate 5, single vehicle collision, no witnesses. Those aren't accidents, Mason said. No, Stokes's voice was granite. They're not. Someone wanted Silent Guardian buried. Someone wanted no evidence that women had proven themselves in combat before the official integration. And now Claire is the last one left who can prove the program existed. Claire's hands had started shaking again. Who ordered this? That's where it gets complicated. The program was run out of a Pentagon annex. Black budget, no congressional oversight. The authorization signature is redacted. But the executive officer listed on the program was a master sergeant at the time. Marine Corps, Special Operations background. What's his name? Stokes hesitated. Then, Marcus Hale. Currently Deputy Director of Special Operations Planning at the Pentagon. Civilian rank equivalent to a 3-star general. One of the most powerful men in the Department of Defense. Claire's vision tunneled. The chapel walls seemed to close in. She knew that name, knew it from somewhere deep in her memory that the pills hadn't quite managed to erase. Hale, she whispered. Master Sergeant Hale. He was my instructor, before I deployed. He ran the Advanced Combat Medical Training course at Camp Pendleton. 6 weeks. Hardest 6 weeks of my life. He was the one who recommended me for the deployment. The one who said I was ready. Stokes nodded slowly. He was also the one who visited you in the psychiatric facility. 3 times, according to the visitor logs I found. Always signed in under a pseudonym, but the timestamps match his travel records. He was there when you were most vulnerable. When the pills had you barely functioning. I think he was making sure you stayed quiet. Mason's voice was tight with anger. This is a conspiracy. This is the government covering up evidence and killing people to keep it quiet. This is everything they said couldn't happen here. It happens everywhere, Stokes said. Power protects itself. Truth is secondary. Claire's truth was dangerous, so they made it disappear. Made her disappear. And now that she's asking questions, they're going to try to make her disappear permanently. Claire stood up. The shaking in her hands had spread to her whole body, but her voice was steady. What do? We go public. We get your story out there. We force them to acknowledge what happened. Once it's in the open, they can't touch you without making it worse. They'll deny everything. Say I'm mentally unstable. Use my PTSD diagnosis against me. Use the fact that I was in a psychiatric facility. Use every piece of ammunition they've been stockpiling for 13 years. Probably, but we have evidence now. We have the Operation Silent Guardian documents. We have your DD-214 with the Title 50 classification. We have Mason as a witness that you've been consistent in your story. We have the fact that 2 other women from the program are dead under suspicious circumstances. That's enough to make people ask questions. Claire wanted to believe her, wanted to think that truth mattered more than power. But she'd learned a long time ago that wanting something didn't make it real. There's something else, Stokes said. She pulled up another photo on her phone. This one showed a man in a business suit, early 60s, silver hair, cold eyes, standing on the steps of the Pentagon with other officials. That's Hale, current photo from last month. Defense Appropriations hearing. Look at who's standing next to him. Claire looked, felt her blood turn to ice. The man standing next to Hale was younger, dark hair going grey at the temples. Familiar face, even though she'd never met him in person. The same face from the photograph in Stokes's office. The face of the man who'd received her Silver Star. Grant Morrison. But Grant Morrison was supposed to be dead. 3 years ago, Stokes said quietly. Pancreatic cancer. That's what the official record says. But this photo is from 6 weeks ago. Mason leaned in. Are you saying Morrison faked his death? I'm saying someone wanted people to think he was dead. Someone wanted to tie up loose ends. But Morrison was either smart enough or paranoid enough to see it coming. He went underground instead. And if this photo is accurate, he's been working with Hale the whole time. Claire's mind was racing, trying to connect pieces that didn't want to fit. Morrison had been kind to her, had helped her, had made sure she got on the evacuation helicopter, had called her Doc with respect in his voice. Why would he participate in stealing her identity unless he hadn't had a choice? Unless he'd been a victim too. We need to find him, Claire said. Morrison, if he's alive, if he knows what happened, he's the key to this whole thing. Stokes nodded. I've got people looking, but he's careful, hasn't used credit cards in 3 years. No phone records, no residence on record. If he's alive, he's living like a ghost. Takes one to know one, Claire said. Her phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. Third one today. This one was different. Not a threat, not a warning. Bussing. Just an address. 1847 Western Boulevard, El Cajon. Apartment 4B. Come alone. Midnight. Bring nothing. Trust nobody. Especially not the colonel. She showed it to Stokes and Mason. It's a trap, Mason said immediately. Probably, Claire agreed. But it's also the only lead we have. Stokes was already looking up the address on her phone. El Cajon, 20 minutes from here. Apartment building, low-income area, high crime, perfect place to disappear. Also perfect place to die and have nobody notice for weeks. I'm going, Claire said. Not alone, you're not. The message said, come alone. The message also said, trust nobody, including me. Whoever sent this wants you isolated, wants you vulnerable. I'm not letting that happen. Mason stood up. I'm coming too. Absolutely not, Claire and Stokes said simultaneously. Mason's jaw set in that stubborn way Claire recognized, the same expression his mother used to get. The Hartley family trait of refusing to back down even when backing down was the smart move. You need me. I'm trained now. I'm a Corpsman. I can watch your back. You graduated 6 hours ago. You've never been in a real firefight. You've never had someone try to kill you. This isn't training, Mason. This is the real thing. Then it's time I learned. You did when you were my age. I was 26, and I learned by nearly dying. I'm not letting you go through that. You don't get to make that choice for me anymore, Aunt Claire. I enlisted. I took the oath. I'm a Corpsman now. We go where Marines go. We do what needs doing. You taught me that. Claire wanted to argue, wanted to pull rank or pull the aunt card or just physically restrain him, but she saw the look in his eyes and knew it would be useless. Mason had made his choice, just like she'd made hers 13 years ago. Stokes checked her watch, 2200 hours. 2 hours until midnight. We need a plan. They spent 90 minutes planning. Stokes pulled up satellite imagery of the apartment building, identified entry points and escape routes, calculated response times for local police, noted the nearest hospital, made contingency plans for every scenario she could imagine. Claire watched her work and felt something she hadn't felt in 13 years. Hope. Not the naive kind, not the kind that believed everything would work out fine, the tactical kind, the kind that came from having someone competent watching your back. At 23:30, they left the chapel. Stokes drove. Claire in the passenger seat, Mason in the back. Nobody spoke. The silence was the kind that came before combat. The kind where everyone was running through their training and their fears and their prayers if they still believed in that sort of thing. El Cajon at night was a different world from the Marine base. Neon signs in Spanish and English. Liquor stores with barred windows. Convenience stores with security cameras visible from the street. People on street corners who watched their car pass with the dead-eyed calculation of predators assessing prey. Stokes parked 3 blocks from the target address. Killed the engine. Checked her service weapon, offered Claire a backup piece. Claire shook her head. I haven't carried in 13 years. I'd probably shoot myself in the foot. It's like riding a bicycle. A bicycle doesn't kill people if you make a mistake. Fair point. Stokes holstered the backup, looked at Mason. You stay with the car, engine running. If we're not back in 30 minutes, you drive away and you call the FBI. Don't call local police. Don't call the base. Call the FBI San Diego field office and ask for Special Agent Victoria Chen. Tell her Rachel Stokes sent you and that silent guardian is active. She'll know what to do. Mason nodded, didn't argue, smart kid. Claire and Stokes walked the 3 blocks in silence. The apartment building was exactly what the satellite images had promised. 4 stories. Crumbling concrete, half the windows dark, the other half showing the blue flicker of television screens, a place where people came to disappear or to give up. Apartment 4B was on the top floor. The elevator was broken. They took the stairs. Each step echoed in the stairwell, graffiti on the walls in 3 languages, the smell of cooking and cigarettes and despair. 4th floor hallway. Lights were out. Emergency exit sign provided the only illumination. red glow making everything look like a crime scene. 4B was at the end of the hall. Door was ajar, 6 inches of darkness beyond. Claire's training screamed trap. Every instinct said, turn around. But 13 years of questions needed answers, and answers were apparently on the other side of that door. Stokes drew her weapon, went in first. Pye cut the corners, cleared the entry, whispered, "Clear, come in." Claire stepped through the door into a studio apartment that smelled like coffee and old paper. The walls were covered in documents, photographs, maps, string connecting pieces like a detective movie. A corkboard showing Operation Silent Guardian in meticulous detail, 3 photos at the center, 3 women. Claire recognized herself, younger, harder, the woman she'd been before the pills. The other 2 women were strangers, both in uniform, both with the same caduceus patch, both dead now according to Stokes. A laptop sat open on the table. Screen showed a document. Claire moved closer. Read the header. Operation Silent Guardian. Final report, classification, top secret/special access required, prepared by Master Sergeant Marcus J. Hale, USMC. She started reading. The words made her sick. The report detailed the program's success, detailed how all 3 female corpsmen had performed at or above the level of their male counterparts, detailed their combat actions, their valor, their proof that gender integration would work. Then it detailed why the program had to be terminated. Political climate not favorable for publicizing female combat success. Risk of backlash from conservative members of Congress who oppose integration. Risk of forcing policy change before infrastructure is ready. Recommendation: classify all records under Title 50. Transfer combat citations to male counterparts to preserve operational security. Provide participants with medical retirement and counseling to ensure silence. Claire felt bile rising. They'd known she was good enough. They'd had proof. They'd documented it in official reports. And then they'd buried it because the timing was inconvenient. Stokes was reading over her shoulder. Her jaw was tight. Jesus Christ, this is worse than I thought. They didn't just erase you. They used you as test subjects and then threw you away when the results were politically inconvenient. A voice spoke from the shadows, not quite. They tried to throw us away. Some of us refused to stay in the trash. Both women spun. Stokes's weapon came up, targeted the darkness in the corner of the room. A man stepped into the red light from the hallway. Mid-40s, thin, worn-looking, like someone who'd been running for a long time. Dark hair with grey at the temples. Grant Morrison, alive, not dead, looking at Claire with eyes that carried their own weight of guilt. "Hello, Doc. Been a long time." Claire's hand went to her shoulder. The scar, the wound he'd helped her survive. "You're supposed to be dead." "I was, for 3 years. Pancreatic cancer according to my death certificate. Marine Corps funeral, 21 gun salute, flag folded and presented to my mother. Whole 9 yards. Only problem was I wasn't in the coffin." "What was?" 150 pounds of sand in a sealed casket. My mother knew. She was in on it. Only person I trusted. She's dead now. Real dead. Heart attack last year. So now I'm the last one who knows the truth besides you." "Why fake your death?" "Because Hale told me I was next. Told me the other 2 women had been killed to tie up loose ends. Told me I was loose end number 3. Told me I could either die for real or die on paper and spend the rest of my life in hiding. I chose paper." Claire moved closer. Stokes kept her weapon trained on Morrison but didn't shoot, yet. "You took my medal," Claire said. "You stood at a ceremony and accepted a silver star for what I did. Why?" Morrison's face twisted. "Not pride, shame, because Hale told me to. Because he said if I didn't, you'd be killed. Said the program needed a male success story to point to if questions were asked. Said you'd be taken care of. Given medical retirement and treatment and a quiet life. Said it was the only way to keep you safe." "Safe." Claire's voice was acid. "Safe. You call 8 months in a psychiatric facility being drugged into a stupor safe. I didn't know about that part. I swear to God, Doc, I thought they were just putting you in counseling, helping you process the trauma. I didn't know Hale was using the facility to keep you sedated. Didn't know until years later when I started digging. By then it was too late. You were out, you'd built a new life. I thought maybe ignorance was kinder than truth. Stokes finally lowered her weapon. You've been watching her all these years. Morrison nodded, kept tabs, made sure she was okay, made sure Hale didn't decide to finish the job. When the other two died, I knew it was only a matter of time, so I started building evidence, collecting documents, creating insurance. If anything happened to Claire, everything goes public. Every file, every photo, every dirty secret. But you sent her here tonight, brought her out in the open, because Hale's moving. I've got sources. He knows Claire surfaced at Pendleton today, knows she's asking questions, knows Stokes is helping her. He's initiating final containment. That means killing everyone who knows about Silent Guardian and burning the evidence. When? Tonight. Maybe tomorrow. Not long. I sent the message to get Claire somewhere I could protect her. This building has 3 exits. Good sightlines. I've got weapons stashed, supplies, cash. We can get her somewhere safe until we figure out next move. Claire's head was spinning. 13 years of thinking Morrison was her enemy. 13 years of hating the man who'd stolen her identity. And now this. Now the possibility that he'd been trying to protect her, that he'd sacrificed his own identity to keep her alive. I don't understand. Why go through all this? Why not just tell the truth years ago? Because truth without power is just noise, Morrison said. I was a dead man either way, dead on paper or dead for real. At least this way I could keep you alive, keep the evidence alive, wait for the right moment. And this is the right moment? You went to the base, you asked questions, you got Stokes involved. That changed the equation. Before, you were just a ghost nobody remembered. Now you're a problem. Hale's going to solve problems the way he always does. With violence. We need to be ready. Stokes's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. Face went pale. Claire, we need to go. Now. What? Mason just sent an SOS. Base security found him in the parking lot. They're detaining him, questioning him about your whereabouts. That's not base security, Morrison said. That's Hale's people. They'll use Mason to draw you out. Standard protocol. Kidnap the leverage. Force the target to come to them. Claire was already moving, headed for the door. Stokes grabbed her arm. That's what they want. You go rushing in, they'll kill all 3 of you. I don't care. He's my nephew. He's all I have. Which is why they took him. Morrison was gathering equipment, loading a go bag with practiced efficiency. We need to be smart. We need a plan. The plan is, I get Mason back. Everything else is secondary. Claire's voice had changed. Gone cold, gone tactical. Stokes heard it and recognized the shift. This wasn't the middle-aged woman from the VA clinic anymore. This was Doc. The person who'd held a position under fire for 90 minutes. The person who'd saved 14 Marines. The person who'd been erased because she was too good at her job. Morrison handed her a pistol. Glock 19, standard issue. Then you're going to need this. Claire took it, checked the magazine, racked the slide. Chamber loaded, safety off. The movements were automatic. Muscle memory from 13 years ago surfacing like she'd never stopped training. Stokes stared. Ms. Hartley, when did you learn to handle a weapon like that? Morrison smiled grimly. Doc wasn't just a medic. Silent Guardian had a secondary training component, hand-to-hand combat, weapons proficiency, tactical operations. They wanted to see if women could do everything men could do. Claire was top of her class in marksmanship, second best in close-quarters combat, best overall in field medicine under fire. She wasn't just a corpsman, she was an operator. Claire checked her phone, text from Mason's number, but she knew Mason hadn't sent it. We have your nephew. Parking structure, level 3, 1 hour, come alone, unarmed. Or he dies screaming. She showed it to Stokes and Morrison. It's a kill box, Morrison said. They'll have shooters on multiple levels. No cover, no escape routes. You walk in there, you're dead. Then I die. Claire, Morrison's voice was gentle. You trained for this, you know better. Rushing into a trap doesn't save Mason, it just gets you both killed. What would you have me do? Let them kill him? No, I'd have you remember who you are. You're not just some aunt trying to protect family. You're Doc, you're the woman who saved 14 Marines against impossible odds. You're the woman they had to erase because you were too damn good. So stop thinking like a civilian and start thinking like the operator you were trained to be. The words hit like cold water. Claire stopped, breathed, let the panic drain out of her system, let the training come back. 13 years of rust falling away. She looked at the text again. Read it tactically this time. Parking structure, level 3. Multiple levels meant multiple angles. Meant shooters above and below. Meant crossfire, but it also meant complexity. Meant coordination, meant communication between shooters. Communication could be disrupted. What assets do we have? She was speaking to Morrison now. Operator to operator. 2 vehicles, 4 weapons, body armor in the trunk, comms equipment, enough ammunition to fight a small war, and the fact that they don't know I'm alive. That's our edge. How many shooters will they have? For a priority target like you? Minimum 4. Probably 6. Hale's careful. He'll want overwhelming force. Training? Former military. Private contractors now. Good but not great. They'll follow a plan, but they won't adapt well to chaos. Then we give them chaos. Claire was moving now. Not running. Walking with purpose. The transformation was complete. The woman who'd walked into this apartment was gone. The person walking out was someone else. Someone harder. Someone dangerous. They had 1 hour. 60 minutes to plan, to prepare, to become people who could do violence and live with it afterward. The parking structure was 10 minutes away. Commercial district, closed for the night. Perfect place for an ambush. Also perfect place to turn the ambush around. Morrison drove. Stokes rode shotgun. Claire in the back checking weapons and running scenarios. Every outcome calculated, every risk assessed. The math of combat. The equations where variables were measured in lives. They parked 2 blocks away, approached on foot. The structure was 6 levels, concrete and shadows. Their footsteps echoed like drumbeats. Level 3 was empty except for 1 car, Mason's vehicle, doors open, interior light on, empty. Allure. Claire scanned the shadows, counted positions, saw what she'd expected to see. Figures on level 4, figures on level 2. Flanking positions, interlocking fields of fire, professional setup. But professionals could be predictable. She keyed the radio Morrison had given her, whispered, "I see 6 hostiles. 2 on level 4 northeast corner, 2 on level 4 southwest, 1 on level 2 east, 1 on level 2 west. Mason not visible, probably in a vehicle on this level, concealed." Morrison's voice crackled back. "Confirmed. I've got eyes on a van, panel truck, northeast corner level 3. Likely holding position. That's where Mason is." "Agreed. How do you want to play this?" Claire smiled in the darkness, not a happy smile. The smile of someone who'd found clarity. "We do what they don't expect. We don't negotiate. We don't surrender. We attack." Stokes's voice, "That's suicide." "No, that's training. They're expecting a scared woman begging for her nephew's life. They're not expecting Doc." "What's the plan?" Morrison creates a distraction. Big noise. East side. Draws 4 shooters that direction. Stokes provides suppressing fire from west. Keeps the other 2 pinned. I go in. Get Mason. Get out. That's not a plan. That's barely an outline. It's all we need. Complexity fails under pressure. Simple works. They synchronized watches. 60 seconds to positions. Morrison moved like smoke. 30 years of training showing. Stokes moved like a Marine. Direct, efficient, deadly. Claire moved like something else. Moved like someone who'd died once and come back different. The countdown started in her head. Automatic, precise. At 0, Morrison's distraction went off. Not a gunshot, something louder. Flashbang grenade. Thunder and lightning in the concrete canyon of the parking structure. 4 shooters reacted exactly as predicted. Moved toward the noise. Combat instinct overriding tactical patience. Stokes opened fire. 3-round bursts, controlled, professional, kept the other 2 shooters ducking behind cover. Clairison crossed the gap in 4 seconds. Low. Fast. Combat crouch that felt like coming home. Reached the panel van. Side door was locked. She put 2 rounds through the lock mechanism, yanked the door open. Mason was inside, tied to a chair, duct tape over his mouth, eyes wide, terrified but alive. She cut the restraints with a knife Morrison had given her, pulled the tape off his mouth, whispered, "Can you move?" He nodded. "Then move, stay low, follow me." They ran. Shots rang out. Concrete chips exploded near Claire's head. She didn't flinch. Returned fire, not aimed shots. Just suppression. Enough to make the shooters reconsider. Reached the stairwell. Morrison was there, covering their exit, smile on his face. having the time of his life. They made it to the ground level, made it to Morrison's vehicle, piled in. Tires screamed as he accelerated away. Shots followed them. Rear window spider webbed but held. Then they were around a corner, gone into the night. Nobody spoke for 5 minutes. Let the adrenaline drain, let the reality settle. Then Mason said, "What the hell was that?" "That," Claire said, "was your first combat operation. Welcome to the family business." Morrison laughed. "That was beautiful, Doc. Textbook room entry and extraction. Hale trained you too well." Claire didn't laugh. "Where do we go now?" "Safe house. I've got one prepared. Supplies, communications. We can regroup there." "And then what?" "Then we go public. Release everything, every document, every photo, every dirty secret. We burn Hale's world down and make sure he can't rebuild it. He'll kill us, probably, but at least we'll die telling the truth. Better than dying in silence." Stokes was on her phone, making calls, activating her network, getting the machine moving. Claire looked at Mason. "Are you okay?" He nodded, shocked but intact. Then, "Aunt Claire, you just assaulted a fortified position and extracted a hostage under fire. Where did you learn to do that?" She smiled. Tired. Real Afghanistan. Turns out being Doc meant more than just bandages. The safe house was 40 minutes outside San Diego. Rural area, off-grid, solar panels and a well and enough supplies to last months if needed. Morrison had chosen it carefully. Remote enough to avoid casual detection. Close enough to civilization to make supply runs. Defensible. He'd spent 3 years preparing for this moment. 3 years knowing eventually Hale would move and he'd need somewhere to make a stand. They arrived at 0300, exhausted, running on fumes and fear. Morrison set security. Perimeter alarms, cameras, motion sensors, the works. Nothing would approach without him knowing. Stokes started making calls, coordinating, building the case, getting media contacts ready. Mason slept, crashed hard, the way young people could after trauma, the way Claire wished she still could. Claire stood outside, watching the sun start to rise over the desert hills. Thought about 13 years, thought about silence, thought about the cost of truth. Morrison came to stand next to her. Offered coffee. She took it. "I'm sorry," he said, "for taking your medal, for taking your story, for letting you believe you were forgotten. You were protecting me, Bichonsi in your own way. Doesn't make it right." "No, but it makes it understandable." They stood in silence watching the light change. The desert coming alive with color. Purple to pink to gold. "How did they find us so fast?" Claire asked, at the apartment. "We were careful." Morrison's jaw tightened. "I made a mistake. Got complacent. Used an old credit card 6 months ago. Thought enough time had passed. Thought the account was dead. But Hale had flags on everything associated with me. The moment I used it, his people knew I was alive. They've been tracking me ever since. Waiting. When you surfaced at Pendleton, they knew we'd make contact. They followed you to the chapel, followed us to El Cajon. I led them right to us. You couldn't have known. I should have. 30 years in special operations and I made a rookie mistake. Almost got us all killed. But we survived. That's what matters." Morrison looked at her. "This isn't over. Hale knows we're alive, knows we have the evidence. He's going to come at us with everything he has. And next time, we might not be so lucky. Then we don't wait for next time. We hit him first." "How?" "We do what he's afraid of. We go public, today, now. Before he can stop us." Stokes came outside. Phone in hand. CNN wants to interview Claire. Live, this morning. National broadcast. I told them yes. Claire nodded. "Let's do it." In Washington, a phone rang in an office without windows. The man with silver hair answered, listened, face turned to stone. "They got away. All of them. All of them. Morrison is alive. He's with Hartley. They have the documents. They have evidence. They're going to release everything." The man was quiet for a long time. Then, "Initiate Protocol Omega, burn it all. Every file, every record, every connection. Make it so Silent Guardian never existed. Sir, if we do that, we lose control of the narrative. We already lost control when Morrison faked his death and started collecting evidence. Now we're in damage control. Burn it, all of it. Then retire Morrison permanently, and Hartley, and anyone who's helped them. The Colonel. Everyone. Understood. And make it look like an accident. Gas leak. Fire, something that destroys the evidence and the witnesses. The man hung up, opened his safe, started pulling files, started feeding them into a burn bag, watched 13 years of careful work turn to ash. Some heroes died twice. Claire Hartley had died once on paper. If Marcus Hale had his way, she'd die again for real. But Doc had survived impossible odds before. And now she had help, had people who believed her, had evidence that couldn't be ignored. The war wasn't over, but the silence was. Dawn broke over the desert safe house like a promise that might be kept or broken, depending on who got to decide. Claire Hartley stood on the porch watching light creep across the hills and thought about all the dawns she'd seen. Afghanistan, the psychiatric facility, 13 years of quiet mornings at the VA clinic. This one felt different. This one felt like an ending or a beginning. Maybe both. Morrison was inside uploading documents to a dozen different servers. Cloud storage, news organizations, congressional offices, the kind of distributed release that couldn't be stopped once it started. He'd spent 3 years building this insurance policy. Now he was cashing it in. Stokes was on the phone with her media contact, a producer at CNN who specialized in military scandals, someone who'd broken stories about Walter Reed and Abu Ghraib, someone who knew how to make powerful people uncomfortable. Mason slept in the back room, exhausted from his first taste of combat. He'd handled it better than Claire had expected. Hadn't frozen, hadn't panicked, just moved when she told him to move and kept his head down. Good instincts. She wondered if those were genetic or learned. Wondered if his mother would have been proud or horrified. The coffee was strong enough to strip paint. Morrison made it the way they'd taught him in special forces. More ritual than beverage. Claire drank it anyway. Let the caffeine burn away the last cobwebs of doubt. Morrison came out onto the porch, laptop under his arm. Face showed the kind of tired that came from carrying secrets too long. It's done. Everything's uploaded. Every document from Operation Silent Guardian. Your citation. My fake death certificate. Hale's authorization signatures. The after-action reports showing 3 female corpsmen performed at exceptional levels. The recommendation to classify and transfer credit to male personnel. The whole ugly story. When does it go live? Stokes set it for 0600. Coordinated release. CNN breaks it first, then Washington Post, then New York Times. By noon, every news outlet in the country will be running the story. By tonight, Hale will be answering questions under oath or lawyering up. Or running. Morrison's smile was cold. Let him run. I've spent 3 years tracking his financial records, his travel patterns, his offshore accounts, every dirty secret he's got. He runs, I release the rest. He'll be extradited from whatever hole he crawls into. Claire looked at her watch. 0545. 15 minutes until the world learned her name, learned what had been done to her, learned that heroes came in forms the system didn't want to acknowledge. Are you ready for this? Morrison's voice was gentle. Once this breaks, your life changes. No more quiet, no more invisible. Everyone's going to want to know your story. Some will call you a hero, some will call you a liar, some will say you're making it political. You ready for that fight? I've been fighting for 13 years, just did it quietly. Time to make some noise. Stokes came outside, phone still pressed to her ear, nodded at them. Spoke into the phone. Yes, I'll hold. Then to Claire, producer wants to interview you live this morning. National broadcast. You willing? What would I say? The truth. Just tell them what happened. Tell them about Helmand, about the convoy, about earning a silver star and waking up to find out someone else got the credit. Tell them about being erased. I'm not good at talking to people. You're good at saving people. That's harder. This is just talking. Claire thought about 14 Marines, thought about holding Martinez's hand while he died. Thought about the moment she'd looked at her DD-214 and realized she'd been classified out of existence. Okay, I'll do it. Stokes spoke into the phone. She's in. Set it up. The safe house had a room Morrison had converted into a makeshift studio. Ring light, webcam, green screen showing the American flag, professional setup. He'd been planning this for a long time. Claire sat in the chair. Stokes adjusted the lighting. Morrison checked the audio levels. They worked with the efficiency of people who'd done complex operations before. Different operations, same precision. 0558, 2 minutes. The producer's voice came through the laptop speaker. "Ms. Hartley, I'm Rebecca Morgan. Thank you for agreeing to speak with us. We're going to go live in 90 seconds. I'll ask you questions about your service and what happened afterward. Just answer honestly. Don't worry about being perfect. Authentic is more powerful than polished." Claire nodded, realized the producer couldn't see her, said, "Understood." 60 seconds. Claire's hands were shaking. Not fear, adrenaline. The same chemical cocktail that had kept her alive in Helmand. The body preparing for combat, for survival, for whatever came next. 30 seconds. She thought about the last 13 years, thought about every time she'd wanted to scream the truth and swallowed it instead. Thought about every veteran who'd asked her about her service and she'd given vague answers. Thought about Mason enlisting and her inability to explain why it terrified her. 10 seconds. The red light on the webcam turned on. Somewhere in New York, a news anchor was reading a teleprompter, introducing a story about classified military programs and female veterans and medals given to the wrong people. Then Rebecca Morgan's voice. "Ms. Hartley, thank you for joining us. Let's start at the beginning. October 14th, 2011. Can you tell us what happened that day?" Claire looked directly at the camera, saw her reflection in the black lens, saw the woman she'd been, the woman she'd become, the woman she was choosing to be now. She started talking, told them about the convoy, about the IED, about 14 wounded Marines and 90 minutes under fire, about tourniquets made from belts and chest seals improvised from MRE wrappers, about Gunny Martinez dying despite her best efforts, about being evacuated with a shoulder wound she hadn't noticed, told them about waking up in Germany, about being transferred to a psychiatric facility in San Diego, about 8 months in a medication fog, about discovering that someone named Grant Morrison had received her Silver Star at a ceremony she hadn't been invited to, told them about trying to fight it, about being told her records didn't exist, about being classified under Title 50, about spending 13 years wondering if she'd imagined the whole thing. The producer asked questions. Claire answered. 20 minutes that felt like 20 seconds. Then it was over. Red light off, interview complete. Stokes was watching on her phone, showed Claire the screen. The interview was already trending. Social media exploding, veterans groups sharing the video, active duty military members commenting. The machine had started and it couldn't be stopped now. Morrison got a text alert on his secure phone. Face went hard. "We have a problem." "What kind?" "Hale's moving. My contact at the Pentagon says he left his office 30 minutes ago. Told his assistant he was going to a classified meeting, but there's no meeting on the books." "Where is he?" "Unknown. But if I were him and I knew my world was about to explode, I'd be tying up loose ends." "We're loose ends. Very loose, very much in need of tying." Morrison moved to the weapons locker. Started pulling hardware. AR platform rifles. Body armor. Magazines. The kind of preparation you made when you expected company you didn't want. How long until they get here? If Hale's using contractors like the ones from last night, maybe 2 hours. If he called in active duty assets and pulled favors, maybe less. Either way, we need to move. Where? Public. Lots of witnesses, cameras. Somewhere they can't hit us without making it obvious. Stokes was already gathering files, backing up to thumb drives, making sure the evidence survived even if they didn't. Mason came out of this back room, saw the weapons, saw the expressions, understood immediately. They're coming for us. Yes. What do? We run, we fight, we survive, same as always. The sound of vehicles approaching came before they could move. Multiple engines, heavy, moving fast on the dirt road that led to the safe house. Morrison looked out the window. Cursed. That's not 2 hours, that's right now. How many? 3 vehicles, suburban, 2 pickup trucks, could be 6, could be 12. Hard to say. Claire moved to the weapons, selected an AR carbine, checked the magazine. 30 rounds, she grabbed 4 more mags, 150 rounds total, more than she'd ever needed in Helmand. Probably not enough now. Morrison was issuing orders. Stokes, take the laptop and the backup drives. Get to your vehicle, head for the highway. Don't stop until you hit the FBI field office in San Diego. Mason, you go with her. Mason grabbed a rifle. No, I stay. Morrison's voice went hard. This isn't a debate, kid. You're untrained. You're a liability. You go. I'm a Corpsman. I stay where Marines fight. That's the job. Claire looked at her nephew, saw determination that reminded her of his mother, saw the Hartley stubbornness that had gotten both of them into trouble their entire lives. Let him stay. If we're doing this, we do it together. Morrison looked between them, sighed, fine. But you follow orders, both of you. I've been in more firefights than you've had birthdays combined. What I say goes. Clear? Clear. The vehicle stopped 100 yards out. Doors opened, men in tactical gear emerged. Professional movements, trained. Dangerous. Morrison counted, 8 visible, probably 2 more in the vehicles, 10 total. Bad odds, but he'd survived worse. The lead man raised a bullhorn, voice amplified and distorted. Claire Hartley, Grant Morrison. You're surrounded. Come out unarmed and you won't be harmed. Morrison laughed, keyed his own radio on open frequency so they could hear. You must think we're stupid. We come out, we're dead in 30 seconds. This doesn't have to be difficult. We're just here to bring you in for questioning. Under whose authority? Department of Defense. National security matter. Show me a warrant. Show me a badge. Show me anything official or get off my property. Silence, then last chance. Come out or we come in. Morrison looked at Claire and Mason and Stokes. This is it. They're going to assault. We hold the house as long as we can, force them to come to us, make it expensive. The safe house had good bones, concrete block construction, small windows, reinforced doors. Morrison had chosen it for defensibility. Now they'd find out if he'd chosen well. The first shots came without warning, suppressing fire, dozens of rounds punching through windows, chewing up walls, creating chaos. Claire dropped below the window line, returned fire, controlled bursts, not trying to hit anything, just making them keep their heads down. Mason was at the back window, rifle up, breathing hard but steady. Stokes was coordinating on her radio, calling for backup, calling every contact she had, making sure someone knew what was happening. The assault came from 3 sides, textbook tactics, fix and flank, keep them pinned while moving on the flanks. Morrison shifted position, engaged the flankers, put 2 down, the rest went to ground. How many rounds you got? Claire asked. Enough, you? For now. The firefight settled into a rhythm, bursts of shooting, periods of quiet. The attackers probing, looking for weaknesses, Morrison blocking every attempt. 20 minutes in, one of the contractors got brave, tried to rush the back door. Mason saw him coming, fired. The man went down hard. Mason's hands were shaking. First time he'd shot at a human being, first time he'd seen the result up close. You okay? Claire asked. No, but I'll deal with it later. That's all you can do. 30 minutes, 40. The attackers were getting frustrated. This was supposed to be quick, clean. Instead, it was turning into a siege. Then the sound of helicopters, military birds, Black Hawks, coming in fast and low. Morrison looked out, smiled. That's not Hale's people, that's the cavalry. The helicopters circled, loudspeakers blared. This is the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Everyone on the ground, drop your weapons and show your hands. This area is now under federal jurisdiction. The contractors looked at each other, looked at the helicopters, looked at the safe house where 4 people had held them off for 40 minutes. Made the calculation. They dropped their weapons. FBI agents swarmed the area, tactical team in full gear, taking the contractors into custody, securing the scene, moving with the efficiency of people who'd done this before. A woman in FBI raid jacket approached the safe house. Badge held high. Special Agent Victoria Chen. Colonel Stokes called me, said you might need some help. Stokes came to the door, lowered her weapon. Agent Chen. Good timing. We were already on the way. That interview this morning got a lot of attention. When Hale left the Pentagon, we started tracking him. When these contractors mobilized, we knew something was happening. Just took us a minute to figure out where. Where's Hale now? In custody. Federal marshals picked him up 20 minutes ago. He's being transported to a secure facility. He'll be arraigned tomorrow on charges of conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and about 15 other federal crimes. Claire stepped out of the safe house, rifle still in hand, body armor covered in dust, looking like someone who'd just survived a war. Agent Chen looked at her. You must be Claire Hartley. Used to be. Not sure what I am now. You're a veteran who got screwed by the system. You're a whistleblower who exposed a massive cover-up. You're a hero whether you like that word or not. I don't like that word. Get used to it. By tomorrow, you're going to be famous. The FBI took statements, collected evidence, photographed the scene, took the contractors into custody, the machine of justice grinding forward. Morrison stood next to Claire, watching it all. This is what I wanted, what I spent 3 years building toward, but it feels hollow somehow. Why? Because 2 women are still dead. Because you lost 13 years. Because Hale gets a trial and lawyers and due process while you got drugged into silence. But he gets held accountable. That's something. It's not enough, but maybe it's all we get. They left the safe house in FBI custody. Drove to San Diego in a convoy of federal vehicles. Mason fell asleep in the back seat, combat exhaustion hitting hard. Stokes made phone calls, coordinating, planning, making sure the story stayed in the news, making sure Congress paid attention. The interview Claire had done that morning had exploded. 15 million views, trending worldwide, veterans organizations issuing statements, active duty military members sharing their own stories of being overlooked, female service members talking about barriers they'd faced. The machine Claire had feared for 13 years was now working for her instead of against her. 3 days later, she sat in a conference room at the Pentagon, the same building where Hale had once had an office, the same building where Operation Silent Guardian had been planned and executed and buried. Across the table sat the Secretary of Defense, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen things. Next to her, the Chief of Naval Operations, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, people with stars on their shoulders and decisions in their hands. Ms. Hartley, the Secretary began, "Thank you for coming. I know this building probably doesn't hold good memories for you." "That's an understatement. I've reviewed the documents you and Mr. Morrison provided. I've reviewed the after-action reports from Helmand Province. I've reviewed your medical records from the psychiatric facility. I've reviewed everything, and I owe you an apology. Not just me personally. The entire Department of Defense owes you an apology. Apologies don't give me back 13 years. No, they don't. But maybe this will help." She slid a file folder across the table. Claire opened it. Inside was her service record. Restored, complete. Every deployment, every citation, every award. Her name listed as Hospital Corpsman, 2nd Class, attached to 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines. The October 14th convoy ambush detailed in full. Her actions documented. Her Silver Star citation restored to her name. Grant Morrison's name was there too. But now it showed the truth. He'd been on scene. He'd assisted. But the primary credit went to Claire. "We're also issuing you a formal apology letter signed by the Secretary of Defense, the President, and the Commandant of the Marine Corps. It will be part of your official record. Future researchers will know what was done to you and will know it was wrong." "What about the other 2 women? The ones who died? Their records are being restored posthumously. Their families will be notified. They'll receive full military honors. Their names will be added to the memorial wall at Quantico. And Hale? Awaiting trial. The Justice Department is prosecuting. He's facing 30 years minimum. More if they can prove he ordered the deaths of the other 2 women." Claire looked at the file, looked at her name, her rank, her awards, everything she'd earned and lost and now had back. "There's going to be a ceremony," the Secretary continued. "Full honors. We'll present you with your Silver Star. Publicly, with media coverage. We want the whole country to know what you did. What was done to you, what we're doing to make it right. I don't want a ceremony. I understand. But this isn't just about you. It's about every female veteran who's been overlooked. Every woman currently serving who needs to know the system will recognize her contributions. This is bigger than one person. This is about changing culture." Claire thought about Mason, thought about the next generation of corpsmen, thought about women who'd come after her and faced the same barriers. "When's the ceremony?" 2 weeks. Arlington National Cemetery, full military honors. The President will attend. The ceremony was everything Claire had feared and nothing she'd wanted. Cameras, reporters, politicians making speeches about honor and sacrifice and lessons learned. But standing there in the October sun at Arlington, surrounded by white headstones stretching to the horizon, Claire felt something shift inside her chest. Not healing, not closure, something else. Recognition, not just of her service, but of all the service that went unrecognized. All the people who did their jobs and came home changed and never got thanked for it. Mason stood next to her in his dress uniform. Proud. Finally understanding why his aunt had tried to talk him out of enlisting. Finally understanding what the uniform really cost, but standing there anyway, choosing it anyway, the way she had, the way generations had before them. Stokes was there in full dress blues, medals on her chest that told their own story of sacrifice and survival. She'd received a commendation for her role in exposing the scandal, had been promoted to brigadier general, first woman to hold that position in her unit. Another ceiling cracked, if not quite broken. Morrison stood in the crowd, not in uniform. He'd declined to have his record restored, said he'd been dead for 3 years and was comfortable staying that way officially. But he was there to witness, to support, to finally see something like justice done, even if it wasn't perfect. The president spoke, talked about Claire's service, talked about the 14 Marines she'd saved, talked about the injustice of erasing her from history, talked about the importance of recognizing all who serve regardless of gender. The words were good, probably written by someone who'd never worn a uniform, but they were something. Then the citation was read. Not Morrison's version, Claire's version. The true account of October 14, 2011, the account that had been buried for 13 years. For extraordinary heroism while serving as hospital corpsman with 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines during combat operations against enemy forces in Helmand Province, Afghanistan. On October 14, 2011, Petty Officer Hartley's convoy was ambushed by enemy forces using an improvised explosive device followed by sustained small arms fire. Despite being wounded herself, Petty Officer Hartley treated 14 wounded Marines under direct fire for 90 minutes until medical evacuation could be secured. Her actions, performed with complete disregard for her own safety, directly resulted in the survival of all 14 casualties. Petty Officer Hartley's extraordinary heroism and devotion to duty reflected great credit upon herself and were in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service. The president pinned the silver star on Claire's uniform. The medal was heavy, heavier than it should be, heavy with the weight of everything it represented. 13 years of silence, 2 women who'd never get to stand here, a system that had failed and was trying, however imperfectly, to make it right. Cameras flashed, people applauded. Claire stood at attention and felt the tears she'd been holding back for 13 years finally start to fall. Not tears of joy, not tears of relief, just tears. The kind that came when something locked inside you finally broke open. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Claire avoided most of it. Found a quiet spot near the tomb of the unknown soldier. Watched the guards march their precise patterns, thought about all the unknown soldiers, all the unrecognized sacrifice, all the stories that would never be told. Morrison found her there, stood next to her in silence. "How do you feel?" he finally asked. "Tired." "That's fair. They erased me for 13 years. Now they're celebrating me. Same people, same system, just different politics. Systems don't change easily. People do, though, some of them. You think this matters? You think any of this changes anything?" Morrison looked at the ceremony area, at the politicians and the cameras and the performance of justice. "Yeah, I do. Because tomorrow, some young woman is going to see your story, going to see that you fought back, going to see that you won, and she's going to decide to enlist, or to speak up, or to refuse to be erased. That's how change happens, one person at a time. What about you? What happens to the dead man?" Morrison smiled. "I stay dead. It's safer that way. But I'll be watching, making sure they keep their promises, making sure your story doesn't get buried again." "You can't watch forever." "No, but I can watch long enough." 2 weeks later, Claire stood in front of a classroom at the Navy Medical Training Center. 50 new corpsmen, young faces, eager, not yet understanding what they'd signed up for. Some of them were women, more than there would have been before, more than there might have been if Claire's story hadn't come out. She'd been asked to serve as a guest instructor, to teach advanced combat medicine, to share lessons learned from Helmand, to prepare the next generation. "My name is Claire Hartley," she began. "Hospital Corpsman 2nd Class, retired. I'm going to tell you about October 14, 2011. I'm going to tell you about the worst day of my life. The day I saved 14 Marines and lost myself in the process. I'm going to tell you because someone needs to, and because you need to hear it." She talked for 2 hours. No PowerPoint, No lecture notes, just the truth, raw and unfiltered. Talked about the convoy, the explosion, the triage decisions, the lies she'd told dying men, the shoulder wound she'd ignored, the cost of doing the job. The students sat in silence. Some took notes, some just listened. All of them understood they were hearing something important. At the end, a young woman in the back raised her hand. "Ma'am, question." "Go ahead." "The news said you were erased because you were female. Said the system couldn't handle women in combat back then. Do you think it's different now?" Claire thought about that. Thought about Stokes making general. Thought about female Marines in infantry units. Thought about policies that had changed and policies that hadn't. It's better. Not perfect, but better. The system changed because people forced it to change. Because women like you are willing to do the job even when the job doesn't want to acknowledge you. So yes, it's different, but only because people made it different, and you'll need to keep making it different. Every day, every mission, every time someone tells you that you can't. The student nodded, sat back, wrote something in her notes. After class, Mason found Claire. He'd been accepted into advanced medical training. Would be deploying in 6 months. Afghanistan, the circle continuing. "Are you scared?" Claire asked. "Terrified. But I'm doing it anyway." That's all you can do. Be terrified and do it anyway. Did you ever regret it? Enlisting. Every day, and never. It's complicated. He hugged her, held on tight. "When I'm downrange and things go bad, I'm going to remember you. Remember that you survived, that you came home, that you kept fighting even when they tried to erase you. Don't make me a saint, Mason. I'm just someone who did her job and got screwed for it. That's what makes you worth remembering." 6 months passed. Mason deployed, Claire taught, Stokes worked on policy changes from her new position, Morrison stayed in the shadows but kept in touch. Hale went to trial, was convicted, received 28 years in federal prison. Operation Silent Guardian became a case study in military academies, an example of what not to do, a warning about the cost of expediency over justice. The 2 women who died had their records restored. Their families received their medals posthumously. Their names were added to memorial walls, small gestures, not enough, but something. Claire received letters, hundreds of them, from veterans, from active duty, from women who'd been overlooked and men who'd witnessed it, from people who'd been erased in different ways, the invisible made visible. She answered some, let others sit, knew she couldn't fix everyone's problems, but could at least witness their pain. 1 year after the ceremony at Arlington, Claire stood in her apartment looking at the silver star in its case on her shelf. Next to it was a photo. The same photo she'd carried for 13 years, 14 Marines and 1 corpsman, all of them younger, all of them thinking they'd live forever. Some of them had. Some hadn't. All of them had been changed by that day. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then did. The voice on the other end was digitally altered. Male or female, impossible to tell. "Ms. Hartley, you don't know me, but I know you. I served in a program similar to Silent Guardian. Different branch, different time frame, similar erasure. Your story gave me courage. I'm coming forward. Wanted you to know. Wanted you to know you're not alone. Never were." The line went dead. Claire stood holding the phone, thinking about other programs, other erasures, other people who'd been classified out of existence. Silent Guardian hadn't been the only one, wouldn't be the last. But now people knew what to look for. Now people knew to ask questions. Now the machine that had erased her was having to answer for it. She opened her laptop, started writing. Not a memoir, not a tell-all, just an account, a record, a document that couldn't be classified or buried or forgotten. She wrote about Helmand, about the psychiatric facility, about 13 years of silence, about fighting back, about winning and losing and what both of those meant. She wrote because someone needed to, because the next person who got erased would need to know they could fight, could win, could survive. She wrote until dawn, until her coffee went cold, until the words ran out. Then she saved the document, backed it up, sent copies to Morrison and Stokes and Mason, made sure it couldn't be lost. The work wasn't finished, would never be finished, but it was started, and sometimes that was enough. Outside her window, the sun rose over San Diego. Another day, another chance, another morning where she woke up as Claire Hartley, Navy Corpsman, Silver Star recipient, woman who refused to stay erased. She made fresh coffee, strong enough to strip paint, smiled at the memory of Morrison teaching her the recipe. Her phone showed a text from Mason. Deployed now, Afghanistan. First patrol tomorrow. Scared but ready. Love you. She texted back, stay low, stay smart, come home, that's an order. 3 dots appeared. Then, yes ma'am. Claire looked at the silver star again. Thought about the weight of it. The cost. The price paid by people whose names nobody remembered. She thought about those 2 women who'd died. Thought about their families finally knowing the truth. Thought about their names on memorial walls. Thought about the woman on the phone. The one coming forward. The one who'd said you're not alone. Maybe that was the point. Maybe that was what all of this had been about. Not the medal, not the ceremony, not the justice or the vindication or the apology. Maybe it was about making sure the next person knew they weren't alone. Knew someone had fought this fight before and survived. Knew the system could be beaten. Claire opened her email, found the address for the anonymous tip line the FBI had set up for people with information about classified programs. Composed a message. To whom it may concern. My name is Claire Hartley. If you're reading this, you probably know my story. If you're sending a tip, you probably have your own story. I want you to know something. You're not alone. You never were. The system wants you to think you're isolated, that speaking up is pointless, that nobody will believe you. That's a lie. People will believe you. People will fight for you. I will fight for you. Come forward. Tell your truth. Let's make sure nobody else gets erased. She added her contact information. Hit send. The message went into the void. Maybe nobody would respond. Maybe dozens would. Maybe hundreds. Impossible to know. But the door was open now. The silence broken. The invisible made visible. Some heroes died twice. Claire Hartley had died once on paper. Had been resurrected by truth. Had chosen to spend her resurrection making sure others didn't have to die at all. That was enough. For now. For today. Tomorrow would bring its own battles, its own fights, its own people who needed to know they weren't alone. She'd be ready. Doc always was.